In the state of Hawaii, under the auspices of the executive branch and the leadership of the governor, there is a department, the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, that was the inspiration of Prince Jonah Kuhio Kalanianaole. In 1910, Prince Kuhio, a direct descendant of the Hawaiian monarchy and ali'i to his people, was the territorial delegate to the United States Congress. During this time, he saw the devastating effect of urbanization on Hawaiians. Living in crowded tenement quarters of the city, they were dying from disease and economic deprivation. He saw his people, with their deep love of the land, the Aina, separated from it and losing their connection to it. To save his people, Prince Kuhio presented to the United States Congress the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act of 1920. The act called for leasing 40 acres of land to each qualified recipient of Hawaiian ancestry, enough land to plant crops and raise livestock to support a family. Through his hard work, the act became law. Initially, the act was a demonstration project to see if his people would be successful, and the site of this test was the island of Moloka'i. The first Hawaiian homestead began on the southern coast, centered around the main city of Hanakahi in an area known as Kalama'ula. It was called Kalanianaole Settlement. Second-class pastoral lots were the words used to label the land allotted to the first homestead on Moloka'i, an island so rocky that no one, not even a goat, can live on, was how one of the administrators of the program described the island itself. The lots were formerly a swamp with hard clay-like earth, littered with large rocks, and covered with thick kiawe forests. Purposely given land of poor quality, the homesteaders were challenged to succeed. Undaunted, 70 applicants from throughout the islands applied for 21 lots. By June 27, 1922, 8 were selected. The hunger to get back to the land and the desire for ownership was so great that Hawaiians living in the tenements of Honolulu and Hilo abandoned their trade as carpenters and mechanics. Others from rural areas who were hunters, fishermen, and farmers came as well. Once on the homestead, the whole family worked 10 to 12 hours a day, cutting and burning brush, hauling off rocks, so that the one tractor on Moloka'i could finally clear the land for crops. Almost a year later, the Moloka'i miracle happened. A bumper crop of watermelons, tomatoes, bananas, and alfalfa for livestock. By 1924, there were 37 families, 278 men, women, and children, all flourishing in Kalanianaole settlement. Unfortunately, water soon became a problem. After only a few successful harvests, the water table turned salty. The wells were sucked dry of fresh water, and ocean water seeped in. Other areas on Moloka'i were considered for homesteading. The largest was an elevated area on northwest central Moloka'i near the present-day airport called Ho'olehua. Though windswept, the land was arable and water more plentiful. Many of the original homesteaders moved their farms to this new location, while keeping their homes in Kalama'ula, or they moved to Ho'olehua completely. In 1926, the 5-year demonstration project under the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act of 1920 ended. It was hailed a rousing success, prompting the United States Secretary of the Interior, Hubert Work, to recommend to Congress its continuation and its expansion to the other islands. This was the beginning of Hawaiian homelands. Prince Kuhio, who died in 1922, would have been proud to see his people back on the land, self-sufficient, overcoming this harsh environment, thriving, raising their children to value hard work and honesty, standing tall on the Aina. The story of the first homesteaders of Moloka'i is the story of pioneers. The following are 3 oral histories shared by the descendants of the original homesteaders who settled in Kalama'ula and Ho'olehua.
My maiden name is Wallace. My full name is Vanda W Wallace-Hanakahi.
I'm William Kaleimomi Oholiu Wallace Jr. You're at my home, 31A Lihipali Avenue, Holihu, Moloka'i.
My father came from Kohala, New Li'i. His name is Harry Wallace-Hanakahi Jr. My mother is from Kauai, Waimea, and her name is Lakona Aida Kukea Kauai Liu La O Mana O Me Ke O Ne Ka Ni O No Hi Ili. That's our Hawaiian name. And we came over 1921.
My grandmother was Ellen Wahinihelela Okaiona Makaivi Wallace. She married William Ka'onohi Okala Wallace. They adopted me when I was born. They came to Moloka'i with my grandmother's father, who was Moke Makaivi. He came with his two married sons, my grandmother who was married, and a single son, Edward Kuamu. The married sons were Robert Momona Makaivi and Moke Ismaela Makaivi. They came around 25-26, and they were invited to come over by the commissioner at that time, Pia Cockett, who went to Waikapu, Maui, to talk to my grandfather, Moke Makaivi. They had their very lush, abundantly growing lands of taro, because Waikapu is a land that has a running stream through it. So they had lo'ikalo, taro patches. Pia Cockett asked him to come because he knew my great-grandfather was and his family were self-sufficient. They were hunters, fishermen, and farmers.
Tutumoke, or known as Moses Makaivi Sr., who's married to Pu Kalaumea Ho'opi'i, had a lot of children. And when homesteading were opened, and they were informed about homesteading on Moloka'i, a good friend of them was a commissioner at that time, and informed my grandpa, having a large family, why don't they move to Moloka'i? And leave off the land by having a homestead. So they decided to come with all of his children. My mom is Ellen Makaivi Poi Wallace, married to my dad, William Wallace Sr. And when they decided to come, the land was barren, windy, and dusty.
So the first wave of homesteaders that came to Ho'olehua Moloka'i left, many of them left because they could not overcome the challenges of that time. And what was really hard in Ho'olehua was the drought condition, the winds, and the lantana. And the fourth thing was spooks on the land. So all of these things, it was too great an obstacle for the first wave of homesteaders to overcome.
As far as I recall, it was 1924. Yes. They didn't stay too long. As for my parents, we went back to Maui. We stayed there. I was born in, then we came back within 2 years. And then because of my grandparents says, I think we'll be making it. We'll be able to survive on this homestead. So we came back, and I was born here, 1926, at Ho'olihua Pukapele Avenue. Yes.
So Pia Kakit asked my great-grandfather, Moke Makaiwi, and he came. He came with his own plow, his mule, and enough food supply to last a year. Plus he came with ammunition, nets to set himself up. So when they came, they saw the condition of the land. And I know that it was a spiritual matter for my grandfather. It was not just, yeah, all right, I'll go over because you're asking me. He put it before the Lord. He made it a matter of prayer. And he was shown to come to Moloka'i. So that's why he moved here.
There were various groups that came. We came from Maui, and there were groups from the Big Island. Yeah, the Hanakahi people, they came from Kona, the Hanakahi family. And then there was some family from Oahu, like the Ka'avas. Yeah, that's Evan's family, Evan English's family. They came at a different period of time. But eventually they all settled here in Ho'olihua. And we are the offspring of all of these pioneering family that came to Moloka'i, more so in the homesteading area of Ho'olihua, Kalama'ula.
My dad is a carpenter by trade in Honolulu, so what he tried to do to earn some money so that he can come over to Moloka'i and try to build a home. But from what he told me before he passed away, that they had to stay in their old tent, like an army tent, the family, and try to work the land. And like my wife's family, he had only pickaxe, shovel, rake, hoe, and oar to try and work the land or whatever they can. There was a lot of cabbage trees. So my dad said they had to cut all the trees down and to clear the land. So what they do, they try to cut the trees down with an old saw, that two-man saw you pull back and forth, and said that after that they have to put all the cabbage branches and try to burn that root out from around that tree. That's what they did. So then my dad came to be a farmer. We would plant bananas, papaya, plant pumpkin, and all those things. Of course, my dad had some pigs. I remember it was a kind of Berkshire, the breed, and chicken for home use. It was a Plymouth Rock. So we had so many of the chicken and pigs, and I used to take care when I was young. My brothers too. We had about 4 boys and 3 girls came over. I was the youngest one in the family.
Now when he came here, under the leadership of Clarence Kinney, who was like the leader of the Mormon Elders here on Moloka'i, he, along with other Mormon elders, among them were Akahi Keanini, Kawila Silva, Clarence Kinney, my grandfather, his 2 sons, Moke and Robert. They fasted. They went into a fast at Clarence Kinney's home in Kalama'ula, and it was only for the Mormon men, the elders. And on the last day of the fast, when they closed the fast, my uncle Edward Makaiwi, in his oral history and in the stories that came down to us through generations of time, we were told that he was sat on the as he sat on the porch at Clarence Kinney's home. It was a clear sunshine, blue sky day, and all of a sudden he just saw that there was this black cloud that rolled in over Kalama'ula.
And lo and behold, as they ended their fast, the Lord opened up the heavens, and we had lots of rain. And all of the gulches, the rivers ended up all down to the lowland.
And then it rained for 2 weeks straight on Moloka'i. And many of the old people always talked about how the roads ran like streams and rivers. And as a result of that rain, there was abundant growth. And
water was scarce at that time. So what happened? Then they had that called the irrigation, the flume irrigation. And we had water. Then that's when our lot where we were staying down in Kalamaula was prosperous. We had planted papayas and all that, like I told you, bananas, pumpkin, we plant even watermelon and all that. Somehow they had to close it down because they said there's so many % of salt water got into the well. So from there on, time was very hard because mostly we need water. But we still have chickens and pig and other things, was growing.
And they ration the water by certain avenues. Say about this avenue, about 3 days. You can fill up your water tanks. Those days we had wooden water tanks, redwood. We have about 4,000 gallons capacity. And that would be for our domestic use. And whenever we clean our tank, flush it out, take all the algae from the tank, we would use the water to irrigate our fruit trees. Yeah. And when it's dry, it's really dry at Hollywood here.
Then later on, they have this, I guess the Hawaiian Homestead Commission had water brought in from the mountain. They had to open up this irrigation system, well and all that. They have the deepest well in Moloka'i for drilling natural water at Kalai. From there on, then they had this irrigation from the tunnel they got from Pilakuna Wailau area. So the times had changed again.
Through farming, that was their major way of taking care of feeding the family. They had their own taro patch, and in fact, in Ho'olihua, the family had wetland taro because they each had their own water tanks. So at least once a week, they would flood the patches. So even though this is a dry area, yet they grew wetland taro. So that was their main staple. Mo'omomi was the icebox, the refrigerator, because that's where they went fishing. And so while you wait for your crop to grow, that's food right away. And they were also hunters. And then the co-op began. I'm not sure which year it began, but you could get that from my brother Bill. But when the co-op began, homesteaders tried on their own to plant pineapple, but it wasn't very successful. And I think it was more in the area of management that there were problems. And so eventually it just closed up, and Libby McNeil, Del Monte came in, then the homesteaders leased their lands to the pineapple companies.
As far as I remember, the homesteaders were able to cultivate their own pineapple for a certain period of time. And during that time, they were able to make lots of money. But then along the way, something went wrong. And they said that the commission came in, and Department of Hawaiian Homes came in to negotiate with the homesteaders. Says, you people are getting old, yeah? The children need to go away for good education rather than, just stay here, work in the fields and be farmer all your lives. So why don't we lease the land out to the pineapple companies? And thereby they do all the work. All you do is receive an amount, X number of amount every month. So all homesteaders agree with that. Says, okay, we get this money, probably will help educate our children.
On a monthly basis, yes. And that's how many of them were able to build their homes. And then once a year, if the pineapple company did well, they would get a sizable bonus. If you had over $1,000, that was sizable to the homesteaders.
For $70 a month, you lease out your 40 acres. I should say maybe 35, because 5 acres is your house lot, and your farm lot is away from home, yeah? So this is what they did. For $70, they leased the land to Libby Company. Yeah. But before that, they were farming their own land. Hey, they made good money. A lot of homesteaders, they knew how to budget. They had beautiful vehicles, those days. They had Terraplane, they had Ford, yeah, I remember those days. Some of the families in Hollywood had beautiful cars. Then that was $70. Then with Libby Company, they went, about 15, maybe 10 years later down the road, they increased it to $90, because they told Homestead as well, it's very expensive to raise pineapple. The union came in, X amount of dollars, the workers need to pay dues and things like that. So this is all we can afford, to pay the homesteaders $90 a month. And with that $90 a month, the homesteaders were able to meet their mortgages. They have, bills like anybody do. And those people that have electricity, well, their water bills to pay, electricity, doctor bill, and food bills and things like that.
Like I told you, I used to pick up pineapple back pine. A wooden box hold 12 pineapple, 10 cents a box. And I have to go in the line, carry that bag to put the pineapple in there, cut it up, take the top off, and put it in that box. And it was hard. I was only 10 years old. And I had the hardest time carrying that bag because when it's weighted down, it's not easy going through the line with the pineapple tops, how close they are. You have to break it open to go through and unload your pineapple. My mother on the other end trying to put it in the box. I go back in the line again on the opposite side. They have boxes both sides. And you have to fill it up. 10 cents a box. It's not that easy.
But Dad, he works hard. And he was a good farmer. He farmed by way of the Hawaiian moon calendar. Yes. And he always teaches me to, whenever I plant a banana, make the hole first and get your banana tree, a young shoot of banana.
He would plant by the moon, Mahilani moon. He would feed us, and at midday, make sure that we were full. And then he would take us outside. And the keiki bananas, he would have us hold it on our shoulder and drag it, like it was really heavy.
And you go by the side of the banana and you call the gods. Yeah, call the gods 3 times. Kokua.
Kokua, kokua, like it was such a heavy burden. And then fling it into the hole, then cover it and tamp it down. And the idea was that we were full so that the fruit would be full. We would make it as though it were heavy so that the fruit would also, the bunch would be very heavy and long. And it was a fact that every tree that was planted, he had to put a brace because his bunch would hang like 4 feet long.
They taught us wonderful value of life, and take care of your family also, and hard work. Work will never kill a man. Work will bring you much more strength and responsibility. Because when you plant something, you're responsible for that plant, to nourish it, just like raising a family. When your child comes, you're responsible for your child. So that's very important. So those are the values that we inherited from our grandfolks and our parents. This is what we give to our children also.
What they had that is not seen today is a kind of faith, is a strong spiritual faith where they depended on God for their livelihood, for the well-being of their family.
What you earn is what you have for your family and yourself. You don't work, you don't eat. That's all I was told. My parents told us.
The other thing was an ethic, work ethic, where they worked hard. And it was necessity. Yeah, you either worked or you didn't eat. But it was a part of their life. There was no question you worked. There was a lot of aloha, unconditional aloha, where you just took care of each other, you took care of your family, and you did it because of love. So these, to me, are values that are that can carry us through. They are really universal values, yeah. But it's just to have it as strong as we had it back then. I don't see it today. So, those are the kinds of things that I would, like to see perpetuate. And of course, our language was a part of our life, because that was my grandparents' first language. And so our culture is in our language. So that is another thing that, to me, is a responsibility for me to perpetuate also.
And all that time, I've been all over the world mostly, like South America on the East Coast, on the West Coast, down Australia, and Europe, and all those places. My mind and heart was always at home here. And when I retired, I came home here to settle down. And because I know the people are born and raised here. I feel that I feel better home here than elsewhere. Of course, other places are beautiful too. I've seen very nice, but my heart and mind is always home here, my family and friends.
Well, I thank you folks for coming to the home and kind of information about the pioneers of Hawaiian Homestead. And I'm a third generation homesteader, and I love the land. I love to be a part of this a great Department of Hawaiian Homes Leases. Yeah. And we're thankful to Kalaniana Ole, Jono, for as he went to Congress to fight to have a Hawaiian on the land. You can imagine all of this land going to who if you hadn't done that. Yeah. Thank you for coming. Get all these good information that others may know how we feel and what happened in the past about homesteading in Hawaiian.